All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. For those of you who might be new, my name is Randy Eckman, and I own Stretch Your Mind Entertainment, a very, very small, and by very small, I mean one man, video production company based in the Houston, Texas area. And I am doing this series of live streams to chronicle my adventures in trying to break into the live event, live streaming world, and and that's mostly the technical piece of how do I put together a production rig that I intend to use on location for these kinds of events. But occasionally we talk about other kind of related matters. Sorry, I dropped something. We talk about other kind of related matters to getting this all organized on the business side as well. So right now we're in. This is I think episode 4 of the series where I'm trying to focus on more of the technical details. By the way, my dinner arrived. I just got something from DoorDash and it arrived very, very late. So I just ate it very quickly before I got on the stream, and I have my bag of kind of trash down here, and Craig is going through it. So please disregard the background noise. I apologize, and I didn't want to take the time to get up and throw it away right now, since I was like 10 seconds from the stream starting when I shoved everything to the side. So, but I wanted to start on time, and so here we are, and I'm ready to talk to you guys. So. It's an exciting. I have some exciting news though before I get into the technical details a little bit more today. I did actually have someone reach out to me today, or earlier this week, I should say, earlier this week over the weekend. I don't even know what day it is. It's Monday, so I guess over the weekend last week, whatever. Anyway, I had a former client reach out to me and say that they were interested in enlisting me for using for doing live streams for them, and so I was asked to put together a bid for doing those services for that event that they have in mind. And of course, given the the nature of the business, I can't talk a whole lot about all of the finer details, obviously. But it's good that that what I'm doing here is starting to get some attention from people in my circles who might actually be interested in this sort of thing that I'm talking about. And I think that my whole goal of this stream is definitely to walk anyone through this who is interested in any of the details and like what goes into planning and building and doing this sort of production. But also it's to show you that if you if you want to do something as simple as just like put your phone on a stand and do Facebook Live, like that's totally acceptable, depending on what you're trying to do. But if you are like a professional organization of some sort and you are wanting to do something that's a little more polished, it's not straightforward to do, and you do have to do some really sophisticated things to make it look good and make the stream be reliable. And so that's what we're doing here, is trying to think about what are all the things that need to go into putting together a really good quality product, and something that's robust and is going to work when you get to the venue and have it work reliably every time, or at least enough to get by. So anyway, this is why. Oh, hey Craig. He's uh-oh. See, all right. So I keep hearing the dreaded. Here, let me test something really quick. Okay, so, all right. So I keep having issues with my My Ultra Studio, stand by 1 second. Let me move this to get this away from him. Craig, you big turd. All right, so the problem that I'm having right this second is, of course, that my seat was further back than I thought it was. My Ultra Studio, my Ultra Studio 4K keeps disconnecting from my laptop. And I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. But it's very disconcerting. And it doesn't help that I think Craig got up here and was trying to climb up on the table and he was knocking that cable. So, I think it's a good cable. Oh, I should have just taken the trash out while I was out of the room. But I'm not smart. Anyway, the cable seems to be securely plugged in as far as I can tell, but I think he might have just bumped it when he was trying to climb up on the table, and I'm gonna guess that it might be the port in my laptop might be the problem, because this is a pretty new cable and hasn't really been used a whole lot, so I don't think it's anything wrong with the cable. But anyway, so when that happens, of course, then my graphics don't work, because I'm running the graphics through the Ultra Studio. And so we're going to try to bring OBS back up, because I shut it down in an attempt to try to reconnect with the box. So let's see if I try to put something up on the screen again. Is it going to work? Hey, okay, we got it back. All right. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm sorry about all of that distraction. So anyways, I was saying that, the point is that organizations that want to do live streams that look really good really need to bring on, they could do it themselves, but my point is to demonstrate that this is quite an undertaking if you really want to make a good product, and do a good stream and have everything work, and know what's going on. It's not straightforward. And so it's usually beneficial to bring on somebody else who can manage all of that stuff for you, so you don't have to know all of those details if your day job is not, or your night job in my case, is not dealing with all of the complications of broadcast engineering. So anyway, I was grateful for my previous client reaching out to me and asking me to bid on this new job. So of course, there's no guarantees that I would get it. I also have to respond somewhat quickly, and though the event isn't until sometime next year, so I would have more than enough time to get all of my equipment in order here, like we've been walking through on these streams. I definitely don't have it all together in the next couple weeks, which is when there's no way that I could have that done in the next couple weeks, which is when they want the bid. So I would definitely have to bid knowing that there's going to be, some uncertainty, or I'll have to just eat some cost if it turns out that I underbid what it costs to finally get all of this stuff going and off the ground and everything. So anyway, but that's exciting news, that opportunity has presented itself. And so, yeah, if I win it, this would be an awesome opportunity to try everything out. And I would like to do some sample streams before I get to the real deal as well. So we talked about doing some other like pro bono work before we get to the big event that for which they would be paying, which is also a really great opportunity I've been wanting to try to find opportunities to do stuff like that. But again, just because I haven't reached and didn't think I would be near maturity for the next couple months at this point, I hadn't started reaching out and making those contacts yet. But, hey, this whole time I've been trying to find the motivation to keep going and get this, that's the whole thing, is trying to get over the hump on designing this, building this, getting my business finally like all in order here on doing this work that I've been wanting to do for years now, is getting involved in this kind of work. And so this is definitely the motivation now. When I didn't really have anyone banging at my door for this kind of work, I didn't quite have that motivation, and there was other things going on in life that were distracting me from really sitting down and focusing on this stuff. But finally we're there. So we're focusing on it. We're putting it together, figuring out the technical details, figuring out the business part of this. And hopefully this is the beginning of a good relationship with that client. And then, give me a good example that I can point to for other future potential clients and say, look at this product that I made and see how amazing it is, for, being my only, first few forays into this kind of production. But anyway, so there's that. That's exciting news. So there was something else I was literally just gonna say, and my mind just went completely blank. Oh, I know what it was. So I have spent a lot of these streams talking about my Teradek box and the cellular signals and all this sort of stuff, and cell phone plans and all this sort of stuff. That's not even the fun part of all this. It's not even the video part of video production. It's just the means to the end of doing the signal distribution. But one of the reasons that this client had reached out to me was because they have done live stream events previously, and I think that they had a good product that they got at the time. Like the stream itself was produced well and all that sort of stuff, so I don't think they had any complaints about that. But they had said that the person who was doing it before was having a lot of issues with connectivity, like when they were trying to get the stream started. And so they had to hold starting the event for a little while they were trying to figure out the internet connection issues and things like that. And they just were really struggling to get a stable signal. And eventually they said, well, we can't wait. We can't hold up the show anymore, because they had, attendees in person at the event, and they didn't want to keep them waiting while they got the live stream going. So eventually they just started the show, and the live stream just had to start a little bit, I guess, a little bit late, or the signal was garbled or something. I don't know the details. I didn't see the stream. I just heard about it. But so this reliability of your getting the stream out of your equipment and out to the internet is, that it's not it's like the final mile in like supply chain or in shipping circles. They talk about the final mile and how that's always the hardest part. And so that's kind of the final mile of video. It's definitely not, once I send the signal out, from my box, there's a lot of other places that it bounces around before it gets to the person watching it on YouTube, watching this stream on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, or whatever. There's a lot of paths that it goes through. So I hesitate to call it the final mile. But in terms of like the actual video processing piece of all of this, that's the end of the line. And getting it out and onto the internet in some form is the most difficult part of this process when you're doing stuff in the field. When you're in a studio, it's fairly straightforward. If you're just like a regular Twitch streamer, or somewhere where you're always going to be near reliable internet. If you're doing it at your house and you have good solid internet at your house, you don't have to worry about these things, right? And so it's when you're doing this stuff out in the field that this is the make or break thing. You have to have a good signal. So I've I have I have regretted so much, kind of going through this of like how much time I spent already on some of these previous streams talking about the cellular signals and the Teradek and how I'm doing the encoding and all this stuff and talking about why I'm not doing it with OBS and all this sort of stuff. But this is why. This is why, because it matters. And it mattered for this client enough that they reached out to me, somebody who was an unproven entity, at least in this domain, but they had become aware that I was getting into it and we had worked together before and they liked my work and they said, maybe you should bid on this. And so, maybe, again, I might not win the bid or anything, but it's just, it makes me excited that they're thinking about me. And I think that they had seen some of these streams and saw how much I talk about the signal reliability and how that is the most paramount part of this whole thing. So, so the quest for getting the ultimate signal distribution for the stream continues. I haven't made any concrete decisions about cellular services at this point from the previous streams, but this is really making me rethink this again. In that, maybe that's part of my billing is if I do want to do one of the plans where it's like I just do the bare minimum to keep the plan alive, so I don't have to keep like stopping and starting contracts and stuff like that, but then just do like daily surge data, like buy data as I need it, even though it's very, very expensive and you end up overpaying for the data when you do it that way. If I put it on the bill and like bill it to the client or just take it as a loss on the income for something, like maybe that's worth it. And so, it's a big deal. And so, I don't want to talk about that anymore today. Again, I've already talked about this way more than I want to, but I did want to bring it up just because it's like I feel validated in the amount of time I have spent talking about cell signals and the streaming technical details, the distribution details up to this point, because it mattered to somebody who decided to reach out because the person who'd done it before had problems with it. And maybe that person who was doing the services before will have figured all of their stuff out and this won't be a problem for them again. That's I can only hope that that's the case, because I'm not this is why I'm a bad businessman. I'm not trying to take away business from somebody else. I'm trying to find ways to make a niche for myself in a market where I don't have a lot of, there's not really anybody else doing stuff like this at the level that I'm trying to do it. So, like this is, we're talking like real beginner kind of stuff. And it's, there's a stream or not a stream. There's a podcast that I listen to, about kind of film and video production and stuff. And they've talked a lot about this of like, some people, a lot of the pros sometimes always get real upset about when new people come in and like undercut their prices, and they're like, oh, they're taking all their business because they're undercharging. And it's like, that shouldn't be your target client. If you are at the top of your game and you're worried about the people who are the bottom feeders of the business, who are trying to, do this at a real discount to the end consumer, the people who are paying for that super cheap product are the people who they're not the customers, they're not the target demographic for the person who's got the big expensive, rate. That their clientele, their target clientele is different than the person who's really looking for the budget services. And so, that's kind of where I am. I'm trying to offer this like budget service, and maybe I will do an excellent job, and far above my pay level and stuff. And I would love to make a little bit extra money, doing this too. It would be nice if I could get to a point where I could charge more, but where I am, that's the space that I'm in, where I am at that point where I do have to maybe undercut a little bit. But my clients that I'm shooting for are not necessarily the clients that other people who do this as like their day job. You know, I'm not trying to take their business. So we're all in this together. So anyway, all right. So where does this leave us? The other thing is that I have been trying to rethink throughout the week. I had been spending some time to try to figure out some of the technical details about the rig that I'm trying to design and build here, because I talked a little bit about last time some of the trade-offs of the pros and cons of including some of this stuff, and ultimately that real estate in the rack is going to be the ultimate arbiter for some of these decisions. But trying to think of ways to be smarter and more efficient about this stuff, achieving the same end goals with less equipment, because it's also like it's heavy stuff, and like I gotta get it to the venue. Like that's still in my mind the biggest question mark that I have, because like how am I gonna get this to the venue? The rack that I have is too big to fit in my car. I did put a towing hitch on my car, so I could get a trailer and put, you know, equipment in a very small like U-Haul trailer or something, and use that to get to a venue. And that would work, but you know, it's still, I would like to minimize the amount of stuff. As a one-man band, I only have so much time to get everything set up also. And so the less equipment I have to bring in, the less time and set up, the less time it takes to set up, the less time it takes to strike, and the faster I can be in and out, so be more efficient. And so I want to maximize my capabilities in terms of doing, you know, making the client's dreams come true in terms of video, but also doing it in a way that's practical for one person to do it in a few hours. And so part of my initial thinking about the bid that I might be making for this is trying to figure out how many hours would this take. So I don't know if I'm going to charge, if I would want to bid on, you know, like an hourly rate versus just having some fixed price and say, if you pay me this for this project, you know, then however many hours it takes, that's what it takes. So either way, I got to come up with, like, let's say I was doing the fixed price. I got to figure out how much do I charge for that? And I think that the best way I'm going to estimate that is to estimate how many hours I think it's going to be. Think about what my hourly rate would be for that, and then use that to get like at least a ballpark starting point number and figure out what a fixed price might be that would be equivalent to, you know, so that I wouldn't be, that would be realistic to the point that I wouldn't be losing out on money if I ended up needing to work extra hours. So I put together what I think is some initial thoughts on how many hours something like this might take. But it's extraordinarily limiting, because I'm thinking back to the concert for the band that I do audio for just a couple months ago, and setting up just sound equipment at that event, at that concert, took many, many hours. And I'm talking about doing audio and video and, you know, like some rigging stuff potentially. Like there's a lot of moving parts to this, and like, you know, you can't, for these kinds of events, you don't have the venue all day. You only have it for so much time. So, you know, I can't get the client like penalized with a fee or something for going over their hours just because it takes me a long time to coil up some cables. So really got to figure out how to be efficient with this. And part of that is being efficient with the equipment, and how do you streamline all of this stuff. So yeah, if I had a full-size server rack at my disposal, I already have all the equipment that I could possibly need and want to make a beautiful stream that anything is possible practically. But I don't have that. I don't have infinite real estate. and I only have so much towing capacity in my car because I drive an electric car, and they're not really for towing. So at least not at the grade that I'm at. So gotta figure this out. So anyway, let's go to the screen then. Is this the left? It is the left one. Okay, so we pulled up our H2R gear plan here so far, where I've just been kind of dragging boxes over there and talking about them one by one, to try to think through what are the pieces that I might need, what are the candidates for inclusion in this rack. So far we've got a number of different devices listed here, and if you want to know more about this, you can go back and watch last week's stream, which should be on YouTube and Facebook. It should have already rolled off probably on Twitch, so you can't go watch it there. If, again, I do have local recordings of all of these streams, so if you go back and watch one of these on one of those locations and it looks like there's something wrong with the stream, definitely reach out to me, let me know, and I can re-upload it from my local recording here. But let's see. So I'm pulling up my cheat sheet over on my other screen so I can see kind of my thoughts on what all should it be included in this. So what have we got so far? So we got the monitor, the SmartView Duo, we got the Genlock distribution amp, we got the mini monitor 3G, we got the Toslink box, we got an exhaust fan, I have a drawer up here, there's the ATEM SDI Pro, ISO, we got the Clarity M stereo that I pulled up, which I wasn't really ready to talk about, but got on a tangent, so there we go. We have the SDI patch, we have a Noitric patch panel, we have a Keystone patch panel, okay, sorry. Just heard a weird noise. There's anyone who's not in Houston though, there's a pretty big storm actually. After not having rain in forever here, we had a pretty big storm today, and so power has been weird. I've had I didn't actually have the power go out, but it definitely has kind of been browning off and on throughout the day, and so I've had to restart a few different things. You know, after seeing the lights flicker and stuff like that, and I started hearing weird noises that made me think that something was wrong, but I think we're okay. All right, so then we have the Smart Video Hub. We have the ATEM. Okay, and then I have the switch that I talked about last time, and so this is the network switch. So okay, all right. So this is a good place to keep going. So, all right, let's see. One of the biggest issues with this setup so far, and one of the it's the modern day dilemma in video production when you're on this like cusp of the prosumer world, where you're trying to use more like inexpensive cameras that are more consumer grade, where the outputs are HDMI and not SDI connections, with the BNC connectors. And the issue is that most professional grade equipment really is designed for SDI connections only. And so the ATEM Constellation HD, the Constellation series of switchers by Blackmagic don't have any HDMI support. There are no inputs, there are no outputs, everything is SDI, no HDMI. They do have different models that are like below this tier in their lineup that do have HDMI support, and there are older switchers that are 2ME switchers that are kind of the equivalent of this, but from their older models, the production 4K 2ME, that has a single HDMI input and a couple HDMI outputs, but it's very, very limited. So it's very difficult. And so you need something that can, if you're going to be in this weird in-between space, you have to have things that will convert your signal back and forth from HDMI to SDMI or to SDI and vice versa. There's a couple ways to do that. One of them is, of course, that you can use. Oh gosh! All right, hold on. You can use like I have the microconverter bidirectional SDI HDMI 3G here, and so this has an HDMI in and HDMI out, and then there's an SDI in and an SDI out, and it allows you to convert an incoming and an outgoing signal both directions. Yeah, hence the name. And these are relatively inexpensive little boxes, but and especially if you only get the like single mode one instead of the bidirectional. Bidirectional is a little more expensive, obviously, but if you get one that is just dedicated a single connection HDMI to SDI or vice versa, they're a little bit on the they're a little bit cheaper and very much on the affordable side. So you could do something like that. The issue with those kinds of little boxes is that they assume that the incoming signal is already in the format that you want your outcoming signal. So like not just the connector being different, the HDMI and SDI, but like if you have something that's at the same frame rate, that's at the same resolution, and things like that, it'll just take the signal that it gets in and repackage it to put it out in the other connector, but it takes in exactly the signal that it gets and outputs it in the different connector. And for most things, that is, that's good enough. If I know that my switcher is set to HD, 1080p, 29.97 frames per second, and I have all my cameras set to that same frame rate, well, then I can get away with just using those simple connections. However, that doesn't always work. Some cameras are finicky and don't necessarily have 29.97 as an option, for example. And so, maybe they only have 30, like integer 30 frames per second, or something like that, or they, or if one of your inputs is a laptop, if I were doing like a conference or something, and a presenter wants to present PowerPoint slides or whatever, they want to show their laptop screen in some way. If you try to plug a laptop into a video switcher, it almost certainly will not work, depending on the switcher that you have, because there are some that have inputs that are that it will do the conversion of frame rate or resolution and stuff to make everything match for you in the box, but a lot of them don't, and so you need something that will do that frame rate conversion for you. So to that end, there's a couple different boxes out there that can do that. My poison that I have chosen is the Decimator MDHX. I have 2 of these, and I intend to just permanently mount them both in the rack. Can I like copy paste in here? Would that work? Hey, look at that. That did work. Okay, so I have 2 of them, and I intend to permanently mount them in the rack to effectively function like bidirectional converters, but give me the option to do a frame rate conversion if I need to, because I do have a couple extra of these just plain converters. So if I'm in a venue where I just have the cameras and I'm not doing laptops or whatever, then I can just plug the HDMI cameras straight into these boxes and call it a day. And that would be good enough for for the most part, or it's overkill even for what we're doing, because the cameras that I have, I think, all do natively output at 2997, so they don't need that extra step. It's really there for if you have other inputs that aren't, like a laptop, an external laptop, or other, um, you know, something that isn't conforming. And so it's overkill for that. But if I get to a venue, if I have a project sometime where I am wanting to stream something, where I need the HDMI cameras, but I also have other sources like the laptop or something like that I need HDMI inputs that aren't going to be in the right format, then I'll pull out the other converters and I'll just use those in line in a connection to move the camera to a different, plug in the HDMI cameras to just a different input in the switcher, a different SDI input in the switcher, just using the dedicated converter for that, and then that leaves the MDHXs open to do the conversion. So there's that. These are often considered like the Swiss Army knife of the professional video world, because they are so good at taking in, they're very handy devices for testing, because they also can produce test patterns. They can and they can do the converting signals from different sources. So in a pinch, you can just use this as a quick adapter or something. So a lot of people like to keep these out handy, like in their bag, just as like an extra tool, like an adapter, and just be able to like pull this out and use it as needed. And so the thing is that I have these two here, but I also have two more devices that I have that are not going to be mounted in the rack, and I do keep in my tool bag, or intend to keep in my tool bag. And one of them is, oh gosh, I can't remember what the two that I have are, but they're different higher end versions of this. So the MDHX only does HD. It only supports HD video, I'm fairly certain. And so I do have one that supports 4K, that I just have out in case I ever have someone who has like an input that, if I did get to a situation where somebody's like, I've got a laptop and I need this output to be 4K, but I need to down convert it to HD to get into my switcher, then I have it for that. And then I have another one for I don't remember why I have it, or which model it is. So it doesn't matter. But I do have two newer models than these, that I do keep out separate, and I intend to use those like as my in a pinch. I can just pull this thing out and throw it into the fray as needed. So yeah, my intent is to mount these permanently in the rack. So then I have some internal HDMI bidirectional conversion, with the ability to cross convert the frame rates and stuff like that. Because another use case is that I intend to have like I may have my laptop with me at the venue, and I might need to plug my laptop into the switcher, even though I don't want to necessarily use the signal from the laptop. Like I don't intend to use it as part of the output that's like going to the viewer. I can, if I at least have it in the switcher, I can put it in the multi-view. And so maybe there's something that I want to monitor from that laptop, and I can just have it like put it in the corner or something in one part of the multi-view and see the output from that laptop or computer or whatever. If it's not the laptop, I can monitor it that way. And for that, even though I don't intend to actually use it for the stream or the video production, I would need the MDHX to get that in the right video format to get it into the multi-view and everything. So yeah, so MDHX, that's what those boxes are. They're very awesome, and I'll have them there. And I also have, did we talk about this yet? No, I'm going to jump ahead in my list. So I also have, to this end, I have a, oh gosh, is it MT? There can't be that many things. Vicky, I think? Oh no. Did I not put this in here after all this? HDMI. I think I forgot to put it in here. I forgot to put it in here. Oh, that's frustrating. I can't believe that. How did I leave that out? Okay, so I have an HDMI hub that is 8 HDMI inputs, 8 HDMI outputs. And you can route any input to any output. So it works just like the Smart Video Hub, except this is 20 inputs, 20 outputs. I have one it's just 8 inputs, 8 outputs, and it does HDMI sources, which is awesome. And so the thought was I would have the HDMI inputs and outputs for the MDHXs going into that, and then any cameras that I have or laptops and things like that would all be in that, in the matrix. And then I also, I'm gonna have monitors there, so I can see the multi-view or see a second screen to show whatever stuff, and they're going to be HDMI monitors. And so it would be nice to be able to not have those hardwired to something and be able to just route stuff to them dynamically. If I want to, like, if I have my big monitor that I have for this, if I have something that I'm looking at on one of those smaller little monitors and I'm like, I want to see this thing in full detail, I can like quickly pull up that camera feed or whatever and put it on the big screen, and being able to route that stuff is really handy. Yeah, so that's cool. But apparently I didn't make a box for it, and I don't want to do this live, so I'll just have to remember to go make a thing for this. I'm gonna bold it here in my notes or something so that I know to come back to do that. So okay, that's the MDHX. Now there's also let's see, so in addition to the MDHXs, and then I have the bidirectional converters, obviously, that I was talking about, there's one other converter that I have that I can use to convert between HDMI and SDI, and this is the Teranex Mini SDMI, or gosh, why do I keep saying that? SDI to HDMI 12G. So this will take an SDI signal up to 4K and convert it to HDMI. So a couple reasons I have this. One, a lot of the little converter boxes, like the bidirectionals that I have here on my table, or the MDHXs, they are only HD, and so I wanted to try to future-proof some of my stuff. So I have at least this that will allow me to get a 4K HDMI signal out if I had a 4K SDI signal going in. So if I ever upgrade the switcher to do 4K, and I could have a 4K output, I could also convert it to a 4K HDMI signal. The hub that I have, the 8x8 hub, also supports 4K HDMI. And so that is also another part of my 4K part of the chain that would support 4K. So this is just another What I intend to use this for is I've called this the program chain. So I guess we'll go ahead and talk about this really quickly. So I'll move all of this up just a little bit, but it's already the text is already getting pretty small to the point that I'm not even sure anyone can read this, and you're just like staring at a bunch of boxes that you can't read. Sorry about that if that is indeed the case. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So, okay, so we've got, so it takes as an input an SDI signal, and it will output the HDMI as we talked about. It does have loop out, where the SDI signal that's coming in can be repeated on this loop out. So you can have it as part of a continuous chain of things if needed. And then it also has these dedicated analog audio outputs. There's an XLR left and an XLR right. But these are actually really interesting outputs from this box, because they can be configured to do analog left and right outputs through XLR connections, which would be awesome to go plug into, say, a mixer if I wanted to get like the program, get the audio out from the SDI signal coming out of the switcher and get it into my audio mixer. This would be a way to do that. So it's sort of like the audio, the HDMI audio de-embedder, or for SDI usually it's called a de-embedder. For HDMI, there's like the audio. I have the HDMI audio extractor up here that takes in an HDMI signal, and then can pull the audio out of it. So this functions effectively like that for an SDI signal, which is usually a little trickier thing to do. So you can get audio out this way. This is one way to do this. But this box specifically also has a feature where you can have it output this as a digital audio signal. And so you can use, we talked a little bit before up here about SPDIF, which is a digital audio format that's used in kind of the consumer space. And up here, we talked about this being, it's actually like a fiber optic signal connector, and using a fiber optic signal to transmit that data. But the way that data is encoded, it's actually effectively the same kind of signal format as something else that's called AES 3, or sometimes AES EBU, or sometimes AES EBU 3. Anyway, it's like the AES is the Audio Engineering Society, I think, and EBU is the European Broadcast Union. And so it was a signal format that they came up with jointly, and I don't know which came first, AES EBU or SPDIF, but the signal formats between those two are practically identical. If you like get down to the bits and bytes, the way that's constructed. And so technically the this is outputting something. If I could convert it into a fiber optic signal, it would be more or less the same as the output that's from the other box. But anyway, so you can have this output that in this AES signal, but on an XLR connector. And then you can get I want to do all my audio using Dante. I talked a little bit about this on a previous stream, I think, very briefly maybe, or maybe not so briefly, about the way that Dante works is it converts all of the audio signals into Ethernet packets that just work on a regular Ethernet network. I think I probably talked a lot about this in this switch discussion up here when I talked about this last week. And so you can get an adapter from Audinate, which is, again, another Australian company that produces pro audio video equipment. They they're the ones who actually invented and own the Dante standard and do all the licensing for it and stuff. But they also do make their own hardware as well. And one of the converters that they have is an AES EBU to Dante adapter. So you could get that AES EBU input adapter and get the audio out here and get it into a Dante network. So that is one option. The other output then, if the left on this box is the digital, the way the digital signal works though is it can embed multiple channels. I think in practice, this box, like the AES EBU3 standard, I think will support multiple channels, but if you only are doing stereo, if you're only doing stereo signals, then it's just the left and right channels, or the first channels 1 and 2. Then that's when it's the same as the SPDIF. That SPDIF standard for consumer stuff only supports 2 channels. So effectively, that's why I was saying the signal coming out of this, because I think this box only allows you to output 2 channels here over the AES connection. That at least the way that this is wired up and everything. So yeah, this will do both left and right in a single connector. So with this one XLR connector, it will convert the signal to digital signal that has both left and right embedded in it. So that leaves the right connector. So what is the right connector in this case? Well, then what it outputs is the timecode signal. And that's one of the main reasons for having this. The other being, of course, that the Constellation HD2ME, as I said, does not have any HDMI outputs. The 2ME Production Studio 4K model that this is sort of targeting at replacing, even though this doesn't do 4K, it has a program HDMI out. It also has a dedicated timecode output to get the timecode signal out from your switcher, to make sure that everything kind of stays in sync. There's a great video from Doug Johnson I've talked about, I think, before on here, who also does live event video production, or multimedia production, I guess, technically, and is a big inspiration for a lot of what I'm doing here. He has a really great video talking about the differences between Genlock, the sync signal that I talked about before, and timecode. They're 2 different things entirely. And so the sync signal just makes sure that everything is functioning at the same rate. It's just tick, 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 tock. It doesn't have actually, it doesn't tell you what time it is. In order to know what time it is, that timing information has to be, that's in a different signal format, and that's the time code, or in this case, it's specifically using a format called LTC. I have no idea what LTC stands for. I guess the TC is probably time code, and the L, I guess, would be linear, but I don't know what else it would be if it weren't linear. Isn't time linear? Question mark? I don't know. Einstein probably has opinions about that. Anyway, my point being that one of the shortcomings of the Constellation HD series is that they don't have the timecode output directly from the box. They also don't have an HDMI output. And so if you take one of your outputs here in SDI and plug it into this Teranex Mini SDI to HDMI converter, then you effectively get those connectors back. So you can take the program output and then get from that signal the timecode signal. So get the time out of the switcher that the switcher's brain is synced to, and then you can also get the raw digital audio, and you get an HDMI signal. So this has a lot of different features here that's really powerful, and so this is a really important box. I think that in practice, I'm not going to use the digital audio out from this. I think largely I'm here to get the time code, and then also to do the HDMI converter without having to tie up one of my MDHXs to do this. But I know that I'm always going to want, at a minimum, I'm always going to want to get the program feed, the final mix of the video and audio in HDMI format. Even if I have it already in SDI, well, great, but you know, if I'm in a venue that doesn't support SDI inputs, you know, then they will almost certainly have an option for taking HDMI. So I want to always have HDMI available to anyone who needs it. It's also nice to be able to just, you know, have that as an input into my HDMI matrix and be able to put on one of my monitors if I want to double check the program feed and see what's actually no kidding going out into the world. I can go look at that signal. So that is part of this magical, beautiful chain that I've called the program chain. So that's the beginning, or actually I think it's the end of the chain. Do I have, where's my notes on this? I was trying to find where, I think it's in my, I think it's on a different tab in here. Aha, I found it, the program chain. Okay, so we'll have, and this all might be subject to change, and I realize that I'm over time now, but I'm into the program chain now. So maybe I'll just get the boxes on here that I want to talk about, and then I can come back and go into detail about them after the break. But okay, so this is basically towards the end of the chain, and we'll take this guy, that's the HDMI audio extractor, that's also part of the chain. So we got this down here, and then we have the SDI. Oh, did I not make things for these either? Oh my gosh. I really thought I had all this together. Ha. I don't have, okay. So maybe we'll go ahead and take the break now then, and let me figure out what pieces I'm missing here, so that we can talk about the program chain. Because I wanted to talk about that. And I'm missing important parts of the chain. So, okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to take a break, and we'll come back in 5 or so minutes, and hopefully I can get you, we can talk about the program chain. So, all right, I'll see you in a bit. I probably, if I were smart, I would have, while I was vamping there, pulled up all the stuff that I needed to actually go to a break, but I did not. So. All right. We are back. That 5 minutes went extraordinarily quickly. Just I got weird things going on here. Like stuff is just not quite working right, which is odd. And I blame Craig for this. But yeah, okay. That didn't give me nearly enough time to get everything together to talk about the program chain. So I don't want you to sit here and watch me muddle through this. So maybe I'll move on and we'll talk about other parts of this process. So what the heck just happened? No, go back. Windows. Maybe it's my laptop. Maybe my laptop is the problem today. Or it's Craig who's biting my foot. Stop it. Anyway, let me go back to. Ow! Your claws are so sharp. Little knives. Oh. Man, I'm really having a hard time tonight. I'm sorry. What the heck? Oh, I see what happened. I was on the wrong page. That would be why none of my buttons are working. They were doing exactly what they're supposed to. I'm just the one. It's a picnic problem. Problem in chair, not in computer. Okay. All right. Power. Power is also a significant limiting factor in the rack. So we got a couple different options. One of them is this Craig. It's the M8X2. I don't really know what the right way to read that name is. But it's a power conditioner by Furman, which is kind of the go-to company for power stuff for like pro audio video. So this is an 8 output power conditioner. It's basically their like lowest tier model. It's like very basic, just making your power signal a little bit cleaner, I think, and maybe some level of like surge protection. I'm not sure. It's more like a glorified power strip than anything else that you can mount in the rack, but it's nicer than just basically a power strip. So this model, it has one. It has a single output on the front and a single switch. And then when you flip that switch, the output on the front is not controlled by the switch, so that always has power. So if you have something that like you need to like have battery chargers plugged in overnight or something like that, the power is always live as long as the box is plugged in. It's always live on this one outlet. So you plug in those battery chargers into this port, and it's on the front, right? So, and then the other ports are on the back, so they're inside the rack and they're not intended for you to like get in there and be plugging and unplugging stuff all the time. But it's one switch, and so you flip that switch and it turns everything on this on and off together. So things that we know are always going to be on anytime that the rack is going to be powered, we could put on this. Additionally, because of its extra power filter, it's the power filtering capabilities, anything that's going to be dealing with analog audio, probably want to put in here to make sure that that's good signal. So So this is an option for getting power in the rack, but I don't want it to be my only option, and I know that I have more than 8/9 if you count the thing on the outlet on the front. I have more peripherals than that are going to need power, and there's not really a good way to consolidate them. So I need a second power unit, and for that, I swear I put this in here. A DJ maybe? Hey, I did do it. Okay. The DJ Power Bar. Power Bar. It's USB. I don't know. They're trying to be clever. This is by American DJ, which makes a lot of lower end kind of lighting products for regular like typical DJs. So like your wedding DJ and things like that. Not people who are like at the pro level, though. You do see this equipment sometimes in pro level stuff. Like their stuff isn't bad, and it's not poor quality by any means. But I don't think it's like they're like an industry standard name or anything. But they're good. So they're I'm talking them down a lot for what they are. They're actually really good. They have a lot of really good stuff, and it tends to be very affordable. But it tends to also be the more accessible items than things that you'll see necessarily in higher end productions. So anyway, though, one of the things that they do have is this Power Bar USB with their silly name, the Power Bar. It's similar in that it has 8 outputs on the back, and it has one port on the front that is always powered on, like the Furman strip, but it also has one on the back that's always powered on too, which is an interesting feature. And I'm not sure that I have well, actually I do have a plan. So I'm not 100% sure if this is kosher or not, but my intent was to daisy chain these. So essentially I'm going to have the always on power in the rear plugged into the Furman box. So that way I could switch the power to the Furman and have it independently turn things on and off regardless of the power state of this power box. But then just only have one power cable for the whole rack. So I can use the power in here to basically be the single plug that goes into the venue power, the shore power, if you will. And that's how power would get into the rack, is through the single power cable coming into the American DJ Power Bar USB. It will power all of these ports, and then it will also provide the power for the Furman so it can be switched independently. But the amazing thing about this is that all of these switches, all of these power outlets have switches. They're each one has its own switch. So this is good for things that you may or may not need to reboot on their own. Notoriously, for some reason, Blackmagic equipment never has a power button or a power switch. If you have an ATEM switcher and it messes up and you need to cycle it, you have to unplug it and plug it back in. That's really annoying. So you need to put it on something like this where all of the Blackmagic devices need to be powered by this, essentially because they don't have their own power switches. I have other parts in here that will be in the rack that have their own power buttons. And so for those, they don't need to go in here. They can go in this one, right? Because if I'm in the middle of a stream and I need to reboot something, that I can just push the power button on the front on those devices or whatever. But for these things that I either can't reach the power buttons or they don't have them, I need to be able to power cycle them quickly. So this will be on the front of the rack for sure. The Furman can go on the back because it only has the one switch, and probably I would only flip it like when I'm getting the rack set up, up and running in the first place, but shouldn't need to touch it again after that. So it can be in the back where it's inaccessible. But like, look, it's a bad day if it got to a point where I needed to reboot the switcher, but I have already, just in my little playing around here at my house, occasionally gotten not the switcher necessarily, but other components that will like get locked up or misconfigured or something, and I don't know how to get out of it. And the best thing to do at that point is just cut your losses and turn the power back off and on. In the Blackmagic stuff, again, because it's all embedded, systems, it's all like dedicated hardware and stuff, it comes up very quickly. It doesn't take a long time to boot or anything like that. So if I were super desperate and the switcher was dying, especially if I have say one of the if I did include the smart video hub, I could just go to the video hub, patch one of the cameras into the program chain, and then have that just be on screen while I reboot the switcher, and flip the switch off and back on, and then that would allow me to recover, and it would appear seamless to the end user because they wouldn't know that the program feed right now is really just a direct line from the camera while the switcher is rebooting. They hopefully would be none the wiser, but hopefully that doesn't happen in the first place, so it's not necessary. But should it become necessary, then I'm going to be real glad that I had this. It's another point for having having the video hub up at the top. So yeah, that's another point for having the video hub. I think that I'm going to end up keeping the video hub after all this. I was going back and forth last week. I think I don't see a way around it. So there's that. Okay. Another exciting thing that I really wanted to talk about tonight is Mac Mini. Okay, so here it is, Mac Mini M1. Now, I got a Mac Mini M1, a 2020 model. Where the heck did I put that? That was inconvenient. This is one of my... I have a few complaints about H2R. H2R gear is really awesome, but one of them is that it like randomly places these, and there's not... My eye is just not drawn towards the box when it appears on the screen. And so, anyway, I often get lost. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so Mac Mini M1. This is I got so it's a Mac Mini M1 from 2020. It's one of the first original models that they had out there. I got this on a super good deal on eBay. It was at least half off. Somebody who just had it, wasn't using it, and just wanted to be rid of it. I think the guy was literally like a lawyer who just like bought it for funsies, and because he had money to blow, and then didn't need it anymore, and so he just was like, well, I want something for it, but didn't really care if he took the loss, and so he sold it to me on eBay for a killer deal. So anyway, so I have a Mac Mini M1. Now, the downside, it only has 8 gigs. I also did not know when I bought this that the M1 models, at least the original M1 like 2020 models, maybe the newer ones do, but they do not allow you to upgrade the memory. Because I had a Mac Mini before, and I did the same thing with that one. I found it was cheaper to buy the model because I got it new at the time from the Apple store. Like I went and bought it in person from an Apple store. What you doing? Oh, he's playing with his spider. It's his favorite toy. Anyway, I bought the original Mac Mini that I had years ago in person in the store, but I bought it with the lowest the cheapest model that they had, which is like the lowest amount of memory, and then got like a memory chip upgrade that was on sale somewhere. And so I was able to upgrade the memory in that up to the maximum that that model supported at the time, for much, much cheaper than it would have been if I bought it off the shelf with the full memory model. So I thought I was going to be able to do that with this, get a really killer deal on a cheap Mac Mini that was only 8 gigs and then upgrade it to 16. But the M1 models, the memory is part of the actual chip. The processor, it's like one monolithic thing. I did not even realize this, but the way that the M1 like architecture works is like it's a CPU, a GPU, and RAM all in one physical chip. And so you can't change out the memory, you can't change out the GPU. It's all one thing. It comes as one package. I did not know that. And so I was like, damn, man, you just scared me for some reason. I don't know why. I guess it's because Craig was like in front of me a minute ago, and then I guess I didn't see him go behind me, but he came up from behind, and I saw the reflection of my glasses of something happening behind me, and I thought someone was coming up behind me somehow. Oh, my nightmare. Anyway, yeah, so I have a Mac Mini M1 that's only 8 gigs. So it's limiting. It's limiting for what I wanted to use it for, which was doing like some heavy lifting video processing stuff that I could offload from my laptop. I wanted to, because I can technically, this laptop that I have that I'm running the stream you're watching right now is a pretty beefy laptop for what it was when I got it. It was pretty expensive. But it's a pretty powerful model. It's got its own like dedicated GPU, and it's got a decent amount of memory, and the SSD isn't super big, but I have my own file server here at home, and I have a million like USB drives of every flavor, so I'm not worried about disk space. But I basically maxed out everything else that I could on this laptop, so it's beefy and it can do a lot on its own, but it does when I have tried to set this stuff up and run it before, and I have everything running on one machine. It does make me a little nervous about its stability, and it is hit or miss sometimes. It can start dropping frames and stuff. So I wanted to be able to offload some stuff that could be offloaded to the Mac. But 8 gigs does not give me a lot of memory to work with. So I've been over the last few weeks sort of testing a few different things here and there on it, in terms of software, to try to see what will work on it and do so in a stable manner. But I think I've finally figured it out. And so I just today paid for a license for ProPresenter 7, and that is software for doing graphics. So like putting, like putting they call them lower thirds, but like putting the graphics on the screen for like names, or doing like full screen, slides and things like that without, something a little fancier than PowerPoint, but you can also do some other like, graphics type stuff and little animations and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, very powerful program, very easy to use, with the asterisk of I tried to figure it out on my own without watching any tutorials, and some of it was easy to figure out and some of it was not easy to figure out. It was not as straightforward as I thought it would be, given everyone talking about it. But once I watched a tutorial on YouTube that was like, it was like an hour, but basically that was all the time I needed to become like an advanced user on this. So, but it's very cool. It's very powerful. Now, I had been reluctant to pay for this or pay for any graphic software for a long time, because I'm a software guy, and I can either write my own or find other open source packages and work with those and edit them and make them work for what I need. That is definitely the path of the most flexibility, and there will come a time, I think, when that is necessary, depending on what gig I'm doing. Um, but for where I am right now, where I'm thinking about, I might have this gig coming up early next year, or sometime next year. I guess it's not really early, but next year. um, and I just need to get this going, and I need to get some practice streams done and stuff like that. I don't want to be losing a lot of time to figuring out software, and so it's not super. ProPresenter is not super expensive. I decided, oh God, Craig. Okay, so Craig's new pastime is that he loves to dip his toys in his water bottle or in his water bowl. I don't know why he does it. I'm not sure that he knows why he does it, but all of his toys are soggy, and every single one has had a pass through the water bowl, I think, at this point. And so I don't know where he is. He left his spider here at my feet, and it is soaking wet. Ugh, Craig. Oh my gosh, you're killing me. Anyway, so ProPresenter. I bought ProPresenter, and it's not a lot of money. There's definitely stuff it can't do, but there's a lot that it can. And one of those things is I don't trust that all of my clients will always have their act entirely together. All of my potential clients, the people I have in mind, who I might be reaching out to for this, for wanting to offer services to them. I don't trust that I'm gonna have all of the information that I need ahead of time to be able to put together things like titles, and names to put on the screen and stuff like that. And I just am concerned that I'm going to get to a venue and need to wing it at some point and like have something that I need to just throw some text I need to throw up on screen. And I wanted something that I could be able to just on the fly type something up really quickly and toss it up on screen in a GUI. I had been previously wanting to use Casper CG. I do have it on my laptop. It works beautifully, but you get no help whatsoever. It is all you have to. It uses essentially all of the graphics are HTML, and so you have to write your own HTML web pages in a particular like format that this is expecting essentially, and it will render your graphics on the screen, and it's incredibly powerful and flexible, but it's a lot of coding. And I'm just thinking about like if I show up to a venue and it turns out that they tell me like, oh, we left a name off of the program and we need you to go edit the I'll show up and they'll be like, oh, we want to have like a donation link or something that we want you to put on screen or something like that. It might be something very, very simple, but I'm not going to necessarily have a web page template that I will have already pre-generated for it. And you can make very flexible templates that allow you to just easily drop in new text and stuff like that. But it's a lot of development effort, and I want to get there and use that eventually as my like standard for doing all of my graphics. But where I am right now, I don't want to be editing code on the fly during a show. And Casper CG just does not have a great capability to do that, because there is a GUI front end to it called Casper CG Client that they abandoned the project years ago. So the server, the thing that actually does all the video processing and stuff on the back end and actually generating the graphics and putting it on screen, that is under continuous development. But they decided not to continue developing their client. And so like, but it has bugs, it has features that are missing or not fully developed. And instead their solution is just because there are so many other people in the open source community that have written their own clients to control the server, they are like, we don't need to put in the effort ourselves because there's so many options that are out there. But none of them just give me what I want, except for one. Um, I want to be able to have a very simple interactive GUI that, like, if I need to in a pinch, just go in and type something and have it pop up on the screen. And that's not super straightforward. There's one website that that has a service that will basically do that. It's a front end that lets you just type in something and click save, and it will export a file that works in Casper CG. It's called Loopic, Loopic. If you are somebody who's interested in getting involved with Casper CG, Loopic is one way that you can have a GUI-like capability to edit things on the fly and generate them. But because it's a website, it requires you to have internet access, and I don't want that to be a requirement because, yeah, I'll need internet for the stream, but I need to, like, preserve my bandwidth as much as possible. And what if I get somewhere and I only have cell signal and I have all my cell phones connected to the Teradek, and the Teradek doesn't share its internet connection with anything else? I just don't want to rely on something that requires internet connection to work. So I want something that I can host on my machine locally. The other really good option for this is, I'm going to just zoom in here on me because we're not talking about the diagram right now. Another really good option for this is there's a guy, Vimlesh. I absolutely am not saying that right, I'm sure. I think his name is Vimlesh, and I don't know what his last name is off the top of my head. But I think he's Indian. I think he's an Indian guy. But he has been super, super active on writing his own web-based client. And so it looks extraordinarily powerful and is along the lines of what I am wanting in terms of having a nice, like, GUI front end that I can run locally and have it control the server and do some really cool stuff. But I find that the code for it is not the most well documented. And I did download some of that stuff before and try to use it, and it was not user friendly. I could see where it was powerful, but it's something that I'm going to need a lot more time to learn how to use efficiently. And so I think that is probably the way forward if I wanted to go the Casper CG route, is I would use the oh gosh, what he calls it, React Casper client. That's it, RCC, because it's written in React, like React.js, the JavaScript framework. And so it is something that runs in a browser, in a web browser. So you'd open like a Chrome window and then connect to a particular site, like running locally on your machine to a specific port or something. And then it will run this thing in the browser that allows you to control the server, and does a lot of really cool stuff. So that's super cool. And I think that is probably the way to get what I want without me having to do a lot of development work, because all the other options either didn't have the features that I want and I'd have to add to them, or they're just immature projects. That one also is not the most mature, but he seems to be very prolific and very active, and I think that he's probably he probably is an engineer for an actual, like, network or something in India or something like that. And so he's probably writing all this stuff to use for his own broadcasting purposes in India. And I'm going to feel real bad if he's not Indian, but I'm pretty sure that it said somewhere that he was in India. So it's pretty actively developed and seems to be pretty well used for wherever he is. But anyway, so that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of moving parts there to get all of those things working and getting the software to work. And it's awesome, and it's what I've been using up to this point for things, but like I said, when I'm ready to like really like no kidding start doing productions, I need something that is gonna be bulletproof and work every time, and offer me the ability to quickly and edit things and get things on the screen. And it's not super expensive, so ProPresenter is the way I decided to go. Now, ProPresenter does actually have a Windows version as well, so it isn't Mac only. But it was originally Mac only. But that's the other thing. Casper CG is Windows only. I think they do have a Linux build that they're sort of like you're at your own risk, but the code, Apple, you're killing me. So Macs no longer support OpenGL. It's a graphics library, open graphics library, OpenGL is what it's called, which is one of the more common libraries out there for generating graphics, that's used by pretty much all software today. Doesn't matter what level, like professional grade stuff, and then like, people doing video games and stuff like that, and everything in between. It's like a general purpose graphics library that is fully functional, and one of the fundamental standards of doing graphics work today. But for some reason, Mac decided that they were not going to support using OpenGL anymore in their operating system. And so instead, all of their graphics stuff is in their own proprietary Apple library. And there are some sites out there that talk about how you can convert your code from one, to another. And in some respects, I think it can be a drop-in replacement, but in other ways, you got to like rewrite stuff. So it's not great. And so to take Casper CG and get it compiled for Mac seems like a very ambitious undertaking. And the fact that I haven't found all that many other people who've attempted it, let alone succeeded at it, makes me not the most confident that I'm going to be the one to figure it out. And so I'm not going to do that. And so if I wanted to do graphics in my laptop, great, I can do Casper CG, but I can also now do ProPresenter because there is the Windows version, so I can put it on my Windows laptop. But if I want to do stuff again where everything is self-contained in the rack and it's stuff that I don't need to take time to hook up, I want to get to a point where I don't need to even bring my laptop. I want everything to be in the rack, and I just like plug in a couple, controllers and then just work, and then everything just work. And so for that, Mac Mini, it's a great form factor. It fits in the rack, and I even have a special rack mount for a Mac Mini that allows me to have a Mac Mini and a Raspberry Pi. You can actually put two Raspberry Pis in all in the same rack, or you could do two Macs. I could take out the Raspberry Pi adapters and it would fit a second Mac there, so I could put two Mac Minis in a rack. The form factor is perfect. Macs are known for being very good at doing graphics and video processing and stuff, aside from the whole they have their own stupid graphics library for Apple. I think because they've just been so entrenched in the video and graphics production world for so long that they can get away with it, and it's still an industry standard to some extent. But I would prefer to have a Mac Mini that's not just 8 gigs, so that's very limiting in capability. But anyway, if I'm just doing simple graphics and simple video playout, I basically would only have one, maybe two outputs for graphics. I can drive that with a Mac Mini and only have 8 gigs. I've been experimenting with it in my living room with my Mac Mini plugged into my TV and using an Ultra Studio box, and it works. It works okay. Occasionally it will stutter here and there, but I feel good enough about it that I would be willing to take the risk of running a show with an 8 gig Mac Mini with uh, ProPresenter. So I've only ever heard good things about ProPresenter being super reliable, about Macs being generally super reliable. I have run out of memory just in my testing and stuff, but it's been like when I've had Safari open at the same time or been doing something else at the same time. But um, if I'm running a single monitor output, well, if I do two, where I have like I can also use it to generate a stage display for like a confidence monitor, potentially for people on stage, and I will have clocks or tell them I can like put messages on it to say like wrap it up or something, which is also a really cool feature to be able to do that. It does not it will get up to the full 8 gigs, but doesn't like go too crazy over, and it doesn't do too much swapping if it gets to that point. So I just have to be vigilant about I cannot be running other programs when I am running ProPresenter. But if I do that, I can fit within the 8 gigs. And it work reasonably well, enough that I would be willing to go all in on this option rather than having my laptop with its fancy graphics. I want to get to a point where I can do it without my laptop. So Mac Mini, that's the way. So we got the Mac Mini. As I mentioned, it also does have support for Raspberry Pi. So I have a Raspberry Pi 4. I have a 4 gig version and an 8 gig version. God dang it. Why is it putting them all the way? It's not even on screen. So I have a Raspberry Pi 4. Like I said, I have two of them. I don't intend to put both of them in the rack. I've been racking my brain, no pun intended. No, it's spelled differently. Trying to figure out if I could even use two Raspberry Pis for this purpose. I think the answer is no. The other Raspberry Pi I originally bought for a project that it could still end up seeing the light of day one day. And it doesn't need a full 8 gigs anyway. So I think I'm going to put the 8 gig one in this rack just to give me the maximum breathing room in terms of processing and, capability and performance. And then keep the 4 gig one for the one that doesn't need that much. It can be a little more sporty for that project. So I'm going to have the Raspberry Pi and a Mac Mini in the rack together. Now, this is my power combo. So as I said, I'm going to have all the graphics, I think, running from the Mac M1. That's going to tie that box up. It's not going to be able to do anything else. But what I want to do is get to a point where I can run my whole show without my laptop. So I want it to only be using things that are in the rack. And so the remaining things that I need to do are controlling my pan tilt zoom cameras, PTZ cameras, so my like robotic remote cameras, because I do have one. Actually, I have two. Well, I have 1.5. I have one, and then I have a gimbal. I have a Ronin RS2. It's one of the Ronin DJI Ronin models that I got. A company called Middle Things, I think they're Belgian, has a product called the APCR that allows you to plug into those gimbals and use them essentially as like a remote control for. They can be they can function as a remote controlled pan tilt zoom device instead of using it what it's really for, which is like if you walk around with it, it will like stabilize your picture. You can instead just put it stationary on a tripod or something and use the motors to pan tilt zoom the camera instead. So I have one of those, and then I have an actual PTZ camera. So I have two cameras that I can robotically control. And so I want to be able to control those. Um, and so the software that drives the APCR, I just found out earlier this afternoon, or early this evening. I guess early this evening. I don't know. After work, before I got started here, I was doing a little bit of Googling because I wanted to talk about the Mac and the Raspberry Pi tonight. I did find that software will run on a Raspberry Pi. Additionally, there is some, you can also run Companion, BitFocus Companion, on a Raspberry Pi. And that is something that you can use with either a Stream Deck or a few different customizable button panels and stuff like that. You can use those to control a lot of different hardware, some different software and stuff like that. So Companion software on its own is really powerful, and it has a lot of capabilities to control just about anything you can imagine that might be audio, video, and even beyond related. It's got a ton of different things that can control. And so if you want to make custom panels with buttons, with customizable buttons of any sort, Companion can probably do the job. And so I have Companion, or I can have Companion on a Raspberry Pi. I can have the Make Pro X Glue, which is the software that I'm going to need to run the APCR. That will also run. The other PTZ camera does not. I intend to drive it also using the Make Pro X Glue. I think I can make it work. So using the same joystick to control both cameras, I think I can make that work. My voice is just really strained tonight. So far, all the control stuff can be done on the Raspberry Pi. I'm not going to really be doing anything with audio, with the Raspberry Pi. And so I don't need to worry about that, I don't think. Actually, no, I lied. I'm not going to be doing any of actual processing of audio is what I meant to say. So Dante does not really have any support for Linux. So I couldn't do anything with the Dante audio itself. However, I could still use Companion to drive mixers or the ATEM and stuff like that, so I can use it for controlling some of the audio. So I do have also a controller that I want to use for doing some audio stuff that I can plug into the Raspberry Pi. So that software will also run. And then the biggest thing, though, is Central Control is currently the software that I've been using to control a lot of this stuff for some of my test runs that I've been doing here. They just came out with, they just announced this a couple weeks ago at IBC, the International Broadcasting Conference. They announced that they are going to have Raspberry Pi and Mac builds of Central Control, which is super amazing, because then that would be the one thing that I had really been holding out on, that I still need my Windows laptop to control stuff, because that software currently only is on Windows. But it has a lot of there's definitely overlap with the stuff that it can do with Companion, but there are some things that Companion can do that Central Control cannot, and there are some things that Central Control can do that Companion cannot. And so having both of them is really the key to making all of these pieces work together and talk to each other, by getting both of those tools to talk to each other. That's how I've made this kind of work so far in some of my preliminary testing I've been doing here and there over the last couple years. So Central Control is super amazing. and I intended to use it to some extent in whatever my final build was going to be, but I had been trying to figure out how am I going to make this work with the laptop, or how am I going to make this work, because I gotta like make room for a laptop and like plan to have my laptop, and I gotta like have all these external connections coming out of the rack to make sure that I can connect my laptop up to things and into pieces in the rack and stuff like that. And it's just kind of annoying, and I really wanted something where everything could be self-contained in this box, and the only thing I would need is an external monitor. And I think that I can get there now that central control is the last holdout that that I can put now on either the Mac or the Raspberry Pi. So the problem is, if I'm running Pro Presenter on the Mac and I can't run anything else, I don't think I'm going to be able to run Pro Presenter, or I don't think I'm going to be able to run Central Control on the Mac. I think it's going to have to be on the Raspberry Pi. So now I'm starting to overload the Raspberry Pi with a lot, but it's not going to be doing a ton of like video processing, which is something that Raspberry Pis are very, very poor at doing, and you should never ever attempt to really do anything serious with video or graphics or anything with a Raspberry Pi. They are amazing little computers for what they are, and they can churn through a lot of data efficiently, but it's very simple stuff. They're very good at very simple tasks. Not heavy duty video processing, and definitely not anything that's like super timely. But it would be perfect for, I think you could even run a number of these programs simultaneously, and it wouldn't overload the Raspberry Pi, especially with the 8 gigs. It's not going to run out of memory, I don't think. And it doesn't take a ton of processing power to just sort of like route signals, essentially. Like you push button on USB tablet or USB button panel, and it just takes signal and sends signal over Ethernet. And so it's just a very, very simplistic kind of concept to be able to process signals from control surfaces and then send out the proper, commands to all the equipment on the network. So I think that's going to be easy to do. I think that's going to work beautifully. So I think that central control probably will work on the Raspberry Pi. I think it's going to be like they're calling it Core, Raspberry Pi, or Central Control Core, which implies that it's going to be some core capabilities, and it's not going to be fully the build from Windows. And so I'm interested to see what makes the cut of what is actually in the Raspberry Pi and Mac builds versus the Windows version, and that might be the tipping point, because if there are some of the features that I really wanted out of the Raspberry Pi, all these words are just jumbled in my brain right now, I'm sorry. If there's some feature that I was really wanting to use from Central Control that isn't going to be in either of these builds, I'm going to be in a tough place, because now I'm going to still have to need to be using my laptop, and it could change the design of the final rack. Or I might just decide that I'm not going to use those features, and I'm going to have to find some other way to do it. So I keep hearing noises coming from the Craig Lake direction. So I have been talking to the guy Joe. I don't actually know how to say his name, but Joe DeMax is how I'm gonna say it. I think it's Joe DeMax. Is the like lead developer, like the project lead for Central Control, and he and I have been messaging on Facebook for quite a while. When I first started out like building the rack and was testing things out, I was finding all sorts of like bugs and stuff like that. It's not necessarily very buggy software. It's pretty awesome, but I would find things here and there. And then I think he figured out after some of our conversations back and forth on like the Facebook page for support for that he was like, "You're a developer type." And so I think he saw me as a very clear ally, whereas most people who work in this field are not necessarily software people. A lot of people who work in video production, like they're power users of technology in general, but they're not necessarily software developers, or may not always understand the ins and outs of things that that I do from my more extensive computer, like computer sciencey type background. And so anyway, so for a while he was like sending me beta builds and having me test things, and I would find all the bugs in them, and was very actively involved in bringing that, getting that product ready for prime time. And so I like it a lot. It's a really cool software, and it does some really great things. But yeah, the fact that I made it's the result of poor choices on my part, because I decided to go the Mac Mini route, and so now I'm like, well, now I got it, and I got it for a great deal, and I could sell it and replace it with something else, but it's something else that I probably would have to pay more for if I wanted to get like a Windows like Nook or something like that. Those things are actually surprisingly expensive if you get one that's like halfway decent. And so my like 8 gig Mac Mini that I got for half off is kicking butt on anything that I could get for even the full price of a brand new Mac Mini, I think, versus the Nook. It's just not a apples to apples comparison. And so I would need my laptop, and I want to, I already said this multiple times in the last few minutes, but I want to do something where I don't need my laptop. So I'm really hoping for, I've got some very high hopes for what's in the new Mac and Raspberry Pi builds for Central Control, and I hope that he reaches out to me. Joe reaches out to me to have me do some beta testing for those, especially because he knows that I'm very interested in it. It's funny because like the day before they made this announcement at IBC, I had posted on the Facebook page for Central Control and said, Joe, have you considered doing Mac and or Raspberry Pi builds of Central Control? And he was like, I'll think about it. And then literally the next day they announced that they'd been working on these builds, and so I was like, oh man, I was your straight man. it was not an intentional setup, even though I have been talking to Joe for a long time. I had no idea that he was working on this, so it was not an intentional thing, but it was kind of funny in the Central Control community, because I think I've become kind of one of the more visible members of that forum and whatnot, and so some people were giving me credit for it, but I didn't have anything to do with it. So anyway. Yeah. So anyway. Let's see. What else are we gonna do here? Oh, all right. Stand by. Okay. Had somebody randomly just decide to start spamming my chats with inappropriate messages, so had to go figure out how to do banning very, very quickly. So that's fun. I've not had to deal with that before. I didn't think that would happen on my little tiny stream here. That I'm not even sure anybody else is watching, but some random person from the internet found it and decided that this was a good time to just start spewing random crap. So that's how you get banned. Anyway, so there's that. Sorry for that distraction. I have not had to do that before, so I didn't know how to do it, and I had to like really quickly figure out how to do that. So that's fun. Okay, well, Welcome to the internet. I guess this is I've been properly indoctrinated as a streamer now that I've had to go and ban somebody. So yeah, fun times. Yeah. So I think I kind of made the the points that I wanted to get to tonight, which is that I really want to try to run everything on Mac Mini and Raspberry Pi, including graphics and central control. And since I'm moving away from Casper CG, at least for now, I can do Mac. And since I now have found that most of the other control software that I need has Linux builds or imminently will have them in the form of central control, I can move to or Raspberry Pi specifically builds, since it's not pure straight Linux. I can use the Raspberry Pi for everything else, and so I think this is actually going to simplify things a lot. And oh, sorry, I just stand by. Okay. I thought it looked like I was getting more messages, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" But no, it was just something else flashing out of the corner of my eye on the screen. So, anyway, yeah, like I was saying, I think I've accomplished my goals here today. I wanted to talk about the new opportunity I had for bidding. I wanted to get through some more of talking about the tech stuff. I'm very upset that there's some very obvious low-hanging fruit of peripherals that I did not already have blocks built for on H2R gear, so I couldn't talk about the program chain. That's the thing that I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to tonight. But we're almost done. I've almost got all the peripherals on H2R gear. We've almost talked about all the different pieces that are out there. And so we're nearing the end of this part of things. Next up will be get everything on there, connect up all of the wires in H2R gear, and then figure out, no kidding, so maybe first I'll not worry about the real estate. I'll just connect up all the pieces for my dream rig and like what capabilities, what things might tie together in an ideal world if I had an infinite amount of space, and then go from there and figure out how to cut it down for real estate. So I think we're getting closer there. And so probably in the next week or two, we will get to a point where can actually have a stable design and start actually building stuff. I have been also in the background working on tearing down my old rack. Like I said, I had done a previous build of this that I didn't really like the way that it was built. And so here we are back at the drawing board again on all of this for what I hope is the final, like, no kidding thing that I'm going to go forward with for these gigs that I'm bidding on now. So I'm taking apart the rack that I already had built, taking all the parts out of it, and getting everything reorganized and cleaned up and ready for a rebuild. So I think that we're a couple weeks away from that at this point, actually getting to play with some toys and talking a little bit more about things. So yeah, but I'm gonna call it here for the night. I will probably be streaming next week, but if I decide at the last minute not to, don't be surprised. I will be out of town and just getting back, and not have a ton of time beforehand to like get my thoughts gathered. And I may not have time to work on getting some of the missing blocks in H2R gear that I wanted to do for the stream next week. So I might end up canceling for next week, but we'll see. We'll see if I have stuff that I want to talk about. Maybe I'll go back and talk about cell phones again. and finally make some procurements there and decide what I'm going to do. So, All right. Well, hey, everybody, have a good night, and yeah, and I'll see you hopefully next week.